Hey everybody, JV here, wrapping up Native American Heritage Month. As we know, America has a lot of different cultures and it's kind of a melting pot, but today we want to focus on the African American and Indigenous peoples' relationship throughout history. Many may not realize this, but there is actually a deep history of Black Native Americans in the United States, but unfortunately, their stories are often left out of the textbooks, which is why it's important we speak on them now. Black natives are ethnically African and Native American and are actually culturally affiliated with indigenous communities. Now, there's two reasons for this. Historically, enslaved Americans came to the country and had close ties to Native Americans. The first reason that we're not going to cover in too much detail today is, well, natives actually used to own slaves, which is kind of crazy to think about. Native Americans in the South would either have slaves of their own or would hunt slaves fleeing to the north or to Mexico, and they would either keep them for themselves or they would sell them back to their owners. But we also share some of the pain. During the Indian Removal Act of 1830, thousands of African Americans, both enslaved and freed, traveled west with their native counterparts on the Trail of Tears. Now, the second part I want to talk about is those who escaped slavery and sought the assistance of Native Americans. There's actually quite a bit of evidence that shows African Americans, both individuals, families, and large parties, sought the assistance of Native Americans when traveling north, or in some cases, Florida. Let's start with Florida. In the 17th century, Africans that escaped from areas such as Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, fled to Florida and built settlements next to the Seminoles. The Seminoles and the escaped slaves formed a close bond based on their hatred of colonialization and slavery. Despite the U.S. government's attempts to break up their union, the two people, through intermarriages and friendship, remained allies. The Africans became known as Black Seminoles. The Seminoles themselves had actually escaped slavery from the British colonies and found refuge in Florida, which at the time was a Spanish-governed territory. And under Spanish policy, slaves in Florida were never cattle. But we're not going to applaud the Spanish for this, because they did so much messed up to the natives and the missions that they don't even get a thumbs up. African Americans that escaped slavery and were fleeing north to the Midwest often seeked the assistance of Native Americans. As they went around the Underground Railroad, they would often seek sanctuary in Native American villages and regions. There's multiple reasons why your textbooks won't teach you this. One, both Blacks and Indigenous cultures have a much more oral history. The fact that one, we just weren't taught a written language when enslaved, and oral storytelling is how the Indigenous kept their history. As our history books got whitewashed, these examples slowly got eroded away. In fact, scholars estimate only about 5 to 10% of slaves could read and write, although the percentage might have been slightly higher among those who were freed. As slaves escaped north, some of the trails they followed were actually the trails the natives had already made, which I think is really cool because they had carved those trails based on the buffalo back in the day. So it went from buffalo trails to Native American trade routes / the Underground Railroad to colonial roads to the shithole that's Dayton, Ohio. Yeah, I'm just kidding. Kind of. But if it wasn't for the assistance of Native Americans, many enslaved would not have actually seen freedom. Every time I go to Ohio, I see the Ohio River that looks into Kentucky, and I think of all those brave souls that had to trek across those treacherous waters. But now that I've learned so much, it puts my mind at ease knowing that they were at least not alone. They had allies on both shores waiting for them. Though a lot of Black and Native history has been whitewashed away, it's important that we listen to the elders of these communities, and not only that, but put the time in to not only do the research ourselves, but learn how we can give back to those who gave so much for us. Now, on behalf of Black people, and I'm pretty sure Native Americans, the U.S. Hey everybody, Yosh here. As you can probably hear, I am extremely sick, so we weren't able to attach our friendly combos to the end of this video, but hopefully look forward to that in the coming weeks. But I'm gonna throw it over to the person who can talk without coughing his lungs out. Keenan, tell us what you learned.
Thanks, Yosh. I hope you feel better, dude. It has been a minute. I was thinking back to when we were in school and the things that we weren't taught. The importance of storytelling. Yeah, they shared that with us, but there weren't those stories to follow up with. And then you kind of look to the history of, Native American people sometimes having slaves, and on the other hand, also being the ones that are, using those trade routes to then make the Underground Railroad and have those different routes to free enslaved people. With the Trail of Tears, having the Black people that were enslaved as well there, like that's something that we didn't get taught, and something that to me is really interesting to learn more about. And I'm definitely going to be putting in additional research myself to learn about that. And so I think as we move forward, things to think about are how can we be authentic, not just as, me and you, Yosh, but how can we as people be authentic of when we learn about this stuff? Is there a way that we can be helping out? Where can we add that impact? And so for those of you watching, check it out, because we will have videos coming out soon that will delve into that term of authenticity and how we can be the best that we can. Thanks.